G'day folks, we're out here visiting Hamish at the Naughty Goat Farm today, and we've been chatting about his aquaponics system, and hopefully the wind isn't making too much noise in the microphone hidden under my beard. And anyway, I thought what we'd do is we'd just run through a bit of an update on where Hamish is up to, a few changes of plans, and look at the layout for the proposed two systems he's now building. Well, to get started, I thought I'd just give you a bit of a look at the shelter these aquaponic systems will be placed under. It's a large greenhouse. Those last two bays there will be left vacant for Nicole's tree propagation and plant propagation. And these end three bays here are for Hamish's two aquaponic systems. In the first video, you saw a large tank that he was thinking about using. That plan has been ditched and he's going with a scaled back version. This aquaponic system is primarily going to be used for the production of fish for the table, and also plants for a little stall that their son has out the front, and to give away or to sell, depending on if it's family or friends or they need a bit of extra cash. So to begin with, I thought we'd have a look at this system and just a few schematics that I've drawn up to explain what Hamish is looking at doing. It's a 2,000 litre, roughly 500-ish or 530-ish gallon fish tank. It sits on a stand and has a sloping base to the centre. This is the outlet pipe here. So what Hamish will be doing is putting a larger diameter pipe over the top of that, some holes down the bottom, and it will act as a solids lifting overflow. The solids and the water will enter up through the internal gap between the pipes over the top lip there. So the water and the waste will be exiting out underneath the tank through a 90mm pipe that will have a T-fitting on the end, and then a couple of step-down fittings that will take it down to a 50mm or 2-inch line that will run into two separate radial flow settlers, two separate ones so we can extend out the retention time by halving the flow rate. So he's trying to get roughly around about an 8-minute retention time in the settlers. And to do so, he would need around about a 400 litre filter. Two 200 litre barrels are a lot more cost effective to purchase, so that's why he's running it that way. From there, he's also going to be running off into two moving bed bioreactors. Same story, 200 litre drums, and then the outlets from those drums will rejoin from the 50mm pipe into a 90mm pipe and run underneath the grow beds into a sump tank at the end. Now, the reason why we're having the sump tank at the end is Hamish would like to bury or partially bury one of these tanks into the ground. Now, pretty obviously, we've got two tanks that have been joined together here. They've just got some sort of Sikaflex or some sort of gasket seal in between with some pop rivets to make one larger tank. And what H is going to do is basically break that seal and flip one off the top, and one will become the sump tank for this system and one will become the sump tank for the second system that we'll talk about in a minute. Now, with this system here, quite obviously the tank is too tall, so H will be digging it into the ground a bit. There'll still be a little bit sticking above, so I'm not sure if he's going to raise the beds, probably one Besser brick or not, to give them some more clearance. Besser brick is a cinder block, by the way, so give him some more clearance and give him some more volume. But we've worked out we need approximately 750 litres worth of volume from this tank to be able to take the water discharged from these three 1500 litre grow beds. So that's what H has got planned for the time being. From the sump, he will be running a master line that runs up beside the beds or maybe underneath the beds, comes up to each bed to let water in for the flooding and draining cycle, and then water into the main tank as well for the fish. It's a pretty impressive system, and I'm glad he asked me to come out and pick my grey bits today because I think we've pretty much well nailed down the filtration on that side of things. There was discussion about using sand beds and other things, but H has all the components he needs to put this together, bar a few bits of plumbing and maybe a pump. He thinks he might have one that will do the job. So that's pretty much all while we're going with this design with this one. As for the setup on the beds themselves, obviously H has bought them second hand and they've come with a lot of the original plumbing, which he'll be reusing as much as he can. He did say he will be running a bell siphon, so they are flood and drain. And we were just talking about different ways to maybe increase the water holding in the beds themselves so we can have a smaller sump. So that might be something we show you further on down the line. As for the media going in there, they will be filled with a mixture of rock and clay. which is what these beds came with. Plus H still has all his clay from the old system, so that's the media that will be going in here, and one of the big deciding factors of how this system will be set up. I think he's waiting for me to play around with some sand first, and then down the line, yeah, we've worked out we could always retrofit this if need be, but I think he's going to be pretty happy with the system as it stands. H has actually been into aquaponics a lot longer than I, so he knows exactly what he's doing when it comes to this sort of thing. Just the filtration side of things was just what he was asking my advice about today. Just quickly, I wanted to thank all you folks who have purchased the Backyard Aquaponics Beginner's Guide as a way to support the channel. I really do appreciate it. Quite a number of folks now have taken me up on the advice option that you have on the guide there, and they've hit me up for a couple of questions this week, so thank you very much for that. I really do love helping you folks out. Also wanted to thank you folks who are supporting us through the YouTube membership and also our Patreon page, Farm Your Own Yard. Thank you for the support. Now this second system will pretty much be raising the fish that go into the grow out tank. It's only half the volume tank wise as the other system, so as a result we only need half the filtration. So we'll have it coming out of a solids lifting pipe through the sidewall into some blue barrels, the first one being a radial flow settler and the second one being a moving bed bioreactor, and then from there running down into a sump at the end and then pumping up the same way with a master line to the fish tank itself, or 2 fish tanks, I'll talk about that in a tick, and another one to every grow bed. So as you can see, H has still got his old plumbing in here, and there's the old top-up float for the system. He used to top up directly into the fish tank. There was no sump in the old system, so that float and another like it will go in the sump tanks down the other end to auto top up the system. But he will be splitting the inlet. There will be some water going in here for the fingerlings, and then there will be more water going down the bottom. Now these aren't the stands that H is going to be using in the end. He wants lower ones, so they're easier for everyone in the family to work on. So they're probably going to be round about a little bit higher than that, just basically because they are a taller lift bed, but the stand height will be the same. These beds actually come from Hamish's original system, and they've grown him a ton of tucker over the years, and they'll pretty much all just be set up the same way, flood and drain, with a line going back to the sump tank itself. And yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty schmicko little system. Up here we do have a few things that we do need to consider. We need to split the flow. This will be the first grow out tank. All new fingerlings will go in here, and when they enter the system, then they will go probably at probably 2 to 3 months, they will go down into this tank here, and from there probably around about the 6-month mark they will go out into this tank here, and that way Hamish can continually turn over the fish. Just to give you a heads up on the stocking rate, he's thinking that he could go anywhere up to around about 90 fish in this one here. So we'll just wait and see. It all comes down to how he ends up configuring the moving bed bioreactor. At the moment I'm thinking he's going to have enough media in there to look after the load created by 90 mature fish. He could possibly increase that to even more. Now this one here, even though it's only roughly around about 1,000 litres or 1,100 litres in volume, it can still take the 90 fish, but because they're not growing out to full size, they won't be as crowded in the tank. And then as soon as they move over here, they're going to have a lot more room. Now H was talking about the way he wanted to run it as the stocking of the system, and his thoughts were start off with 1 batch in there as fingerlings. At the 2 to 3 month mark, depending on the size, they move down into the larger tank, wait a little while longer, and then get the next batch in to go into that tank. Then a couple of months down the track, this lot here can come over to here for the final grow out, and then that lot there can either stay in there till they get a little bit larger or move down into this tank, wait a while longer, and then get the next batch of fingerlings. So you definitely don't want, what's that, 270 fish every 12 months. Even though they're a family of 4, I don't think they could munch through that many, but it is a good idea also to have that staggered grow out, because it will mean that there will be a constant amount of nutrient going to these 4 grow beds here, even though the load limit will be fluctuating in that system. And it also means that as soon as the fish are harvested from this larger tank, there will be more fish coming in here, so the nutrient load in this final system, grow out system, won't drop too much either. So we were talking about how the solids waste would be managed from the system and whether he was going to mineralise it in a tank and then add it back in. But as I showed you before, there's a number of fruit trees here, banana trees over there, little gardens around the place, and the very impressive wicking garden patch over there, as well as a citrus orchard over the back of the house there. They have more than enough ground plants that need feeding up as well. The chooks do their part, as do the goats, but a little bit of extra waste from the aquaponics system can't go astray either. And H was saying that any nutrients, extra nutrients required, will be added via compost teas and sea salt and things like that, rather than having to have a separate mineralisation system again in this area, the greenhouse, taking up space. So that's how he's looking at running the system at the moment, but I'm sure he'll invite us back once it gets up and running, and we'll have a bit of a look at how they're going to manage the nutrient cycle and also the extras for the grow beds. At this point in time, H is pretty sure he knows what he wants to do with the system, how he wants to design it, but as time goes by, as he gets down on the ground, starts tinkering with the build, sorting things out, he might come up with another idea or two and implement that into the build, and fingers crossed he's going to invite us along, and we'll get to follow along in the journey, because I know it always helps other people out when they see what other people are doing, and it's especially helpful as you see it happen at that point in time and not just a bit of a video looking at it after the fact. Now, I've actually been invited out to see Owen's system. Finally, we'll be able to bring you a video looking at how he's got his system set up. It's very impressive. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that will be next week's video or maybe the week after. We'll just have to wait and see what happens with the filming schedule next week. But I will pretty much will leave it there. I do hope you're all well and happy and your own gardens and aquaponics are booming, and I'll see you next clip. Cheers, folks, and happy growing.
Mm-hmm.